Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Auction from the Soul. This week's Parsha is Parshat Pinchas. Yes, I am sitting in a car right now at the American Dream Mall. I am spending the day with my son. I need to take a little bit of a break to give my class, 1 o'clock Thursdays. I'm dedicated to it. I hope you are too. Okay, Parshat Pinchas continues off of the last few weeks of Torah readings. This is all one long story. The Jewish people finally trying to get into the land of Israel, and as they're trying to get in, they are meeting all kinds of interesting foes, warriors, magicians, charmers, prostitutes, all kinds of things you could possibly imagine. Anything so desperate that these locals were trying to beat the Jews in any which way they possibly can. And last week, we know that Bilam and Balak, the king and the sorcerer, realize that they can't curse the Jewish people. They know they can't defeat them. So they did was, let's try to figure out how to destroy them. And we know that the way to destroy them is to get them to do sins. What's the worst kind of sin? Let them sin through avodah zarah, through idol worship. Now, it's interesting to note that the particular idol worship that they were involved in is something called Baal Peor. Baal Peor is a idol and the worship of profanity. The way in which you serve that idol was you would defecate in front of it. Now, this is an interesting question. How do you defecate in front of an idol when your diet has been man for 40 years? We know that one of the miracles of the man is that there was no going to the bathroom, that it was a soul food, that it completely nourished the body. There was nothing to get rid of. So the Chidah says that what they did was they realized that they can't worship Baal Peor, they can't go to the bathroom. So what do? They sent out their young daughters to seduce the men, get them to build up an appetite. And then for the first time now, they're eating vegetables and fruit. I'm sure they weren't eating kosher, because you could go to you could justify harlotry through seduction, but not non-kosher food. And now for the first time, they're eating normal food. They got to go to the bathroom. Their first urge to go to the bathroom, where does it happen? Boom, Baal Peor. And that's how they got into sin with Baal Peor. So the Parsha begins with the Pinchas ben Elazar, ben Aharon HaKohen. That's the first pasuk. Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aharon HaKohen heshiv et chamiti ma'al bnei Israel. The Pinchas son of Elazar, the son of Kohen, what did he do? He turned my anger away from the Jewish people. Me'al bnei Israel, b'kan'o et kinati b'tocho, right? It's through his zealousness he was avenging me. V'lo kiliti et bnei Israel b'kinati, and I did not destroy the children of Israel because of his zeal. So Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aharon. The question is, why does the pasuk need to tell me all about his lineage? We know who he is. So Rashi says, the fi shehayu hashvatim mevazinoto. The children of Israel were disparaging him. They were making fun of him. Haritem et ben puti zeh shepitem avi imo agad avodah zarah. Do you see this guy? This guy, the son of Puti, whose mother's father was Yitro, right? Who he would fatten calves for idols, right? Lavodah zarah v'harakta nasiv shevet miYisrael. He killed the nasiv. The fikach bab katuv v'yichaso acher Aharon. Now, what Rashi is telling you is that the Jewish people saw this guy. Let's just talk a little bit what he did. Pinchas saw two people, Zimri and Kozbi. Zimri was the head of the Nasi of the Jewish people, and Kozbi was a princess of Moab. And they were together with one another intimately. They literally were fornicating in front of the Ohel Moed. And they justified it for all kinds of reasons. And as they're doing this, Pinchas sees this. Everyone's watching in shock. No one knows what to do. He grabs out a spear and impales the two of them. And that's what the pasuk says, that it was Pinchas's actions, his zealotry, that ended up stopping the plague. So the Jewish people see this. That guy's a zealot. He's a freak. He's a crazy person. He's the guy of Ben Puti. He's his father, his father-in-law, his grandfather was fattening cows. He's a murderer. He's a crazy person. What he did was 100% wrong. But that's not what the pasuk says. Next pasuk says, Lachen, and therefore, as a result of his zealotry and more, right? Therefore I say, this is Hashem saying, Hineni noten lo et briti shalom. I am going to give him my covenant of peace. So, V'hayita lo l'zaro acharav brit kuhunat olam. And for him and his whole, all of his descendants will have an eternal covenant of kahuna, because his zealousness was what ended up bringing atonement for the Jewish people. Okay, and then he tells us who the people are. V'shem ish Yisrael hamukeh asher huka et medyanit Zimri ben Slua nasi bet av l'Shimoni. So Zimri was from the Shevet Shimon. V'shem ha'isha, and the woman's name was whom? Hamuka medyanit Kozbi bat Sur. Rosh Umat Bet Av B'Minyan. She was the national leader of that of the Minyan. These are very big families. So we know from the Midrash that one of the things that he gets is this Brit Shalom. Okay. Now what's interesting is that part of his Brit Shalom is that he's going to have a long life. And now the question is, why is long life granted as a result of this particular action? I mean, if anything, this just like seems stressful. It's very difficult to explain. How do we understand it? So let's ask another question. You know, Pinchas lived to a ridiculous age. We know Pinchas later is Eliyahu Hanavi, and now that means he lived for hundreds and hundreds of years. How was he able to live so long? I thought a person's only allowed to live for 120 years. How was he able to live as long as he did? So this Forno points out, you can look at this Forno, it's fascinating. He says that this Brit Shalom means that he received inner harmony. And a result of his inner harmony, all deteriorations, all things that end up, breaking down the body are a result of the conflict of the opposite. And therefore, disease, infirmity, the weakening of the body is all an expression of inner conflicts. Since Pinchas was granted inner peace, there was no internal battles, no conflicts. Therefore, his body didn't age, and he lived for hundreds of years. Now, we have a hard time understanding this. We know the heart, the liver, the kidneys, the pancreas, were all designed to function only for a very specific amount of time. People have all kinds of things. Look at Joe Biden. His mental faculties are going, arthritis, high blood pressure, all sorts of things, thickening of the arteries. So the body was only meant to last until it wears out. But this Forno is saying something different. He says all deterioration happens because of a conflict of things. Now, there's someone by the name of Herbert Benson. Herbert Benson was a PhD, is a professor of medicine at Harvard University. And he found that when patients would take their blood pressure in the office, their blood pressure in the medical offices was always higher than those people who took their blood pressure at home. And we're talking about, this is like 80 or 90 years ago. So he realized that anxiety, the whole idea of being anxious and coming to the, to the doctor's office with this anxiety is what caused the blood pressure to spike. The whole idea of body, soul, mental health, mental conditions impacting the physical body, no one knew about any of that. Who knew that your mental state impacts the body? But now we know, we take it for granted. And therefore, what I believe this Forno is saying is that Pinchas naturally lived for hundreds of years because he was in complete peace with himself. He wasn't in conflict anymore. When you're living a life of harmony, right? When you're living a life where you know exactly that you're doing what you're meant to be doing, just like Pinchas, he knew exactly where he was, he knew exactly what had to be done, and he got the job done. And as a result of that bracha of peace and harmony is why he lived for so long. It wasn't a bracha of spiritual proportions. It was a bracha of physical proportions. Once you live a life of peace, once you live a life with that kind of complete serenity, everything is done. You're good. You live a long life. Okay? Now, we know that this particular idea has major ramifications. God created man. He gave in each one of us these inner sense of what's right and wrong. There's a voice that's in our head, and it tells us, hey, are you living a fulfilling life? Are you not? When we ignore that voice, what happens? Why'd you do that? Why'd you say that? We have regrets. You're so selfish. You're too giving. There's a raging voice inside of us. Now, that voice is there to help us recognize what it is that you and I are meant to be doing in this planet. Okay? God created us with a way of having a center in the middle, asking us, why did you pray like that? Are you behaving properly? Are you a mensch? What were you put on this planet to do? Right? How many times do we want to scream at that voice and say, just leave me alone, I don't want to hear about it anymore, I just want to do my own thing? But there's a moral compass that each of us has, and that compass is designed to give us the ability to do what is right. Now, Pinchas, remember, Pasha says he spoke to Moshe, right? And Pinchas is the grandson of Aaron HaKohen. Why is it telling us that he gave us the Brit Shalom? Okay, Shalom is the antidote to Pinchas's zealotry, right? But how do we understand that? Now, there's a plague, again, it sweeps through the Jewish people. He comes, he does his chesed, okay, which is love, okay, and he ends up stopping the plague. So how did the Midyanim get them to sin? Oh, free love, 1960s again. Let's go back to Woodstock. Everyone's do whatever you want to do, say whatever you want to say, no consequences. Very dangerous reality that they created for the world that we were in. Okay, Pinchas says, no, I'm going to go ahead and what we would assume is Gvura, right? They're saying free love, that's Chesed. Chesed gone too far is destructive and it leads to licentiousness. And Gvura should be the antidote, right? So listen to this. This is fascinating. This is an idea of Kabbalah, and I'm going to end. Okay, the numerical value of the word of the name Pinchas is Resh Chet, 208, which is exactly the same name as Yitzchak. Okay, Yitzchak, we know he's Gvura. Okay, Pinchas steps forward to counter the extreme Chesed with acts of extreme Gvura. He goes ahead and he brings something more. Now, what's interesting is that the pasuk refers to Pinchas as whom? The grandson of Aaron. Aaron is the Kohen Gadol. He's the Ohev Shalom v'Rodef Shalom, the lover of peace, the embodiment of Chesed and everything. Right? He is the son of Elazar, Aaron HaKohen. Okay, now, he has a spear in his hands. Right? The spear, Resh Memchet, is the numerical value of 248. Okay, interesting. 248 is the same exact value as whom? As Abraham. Abraham is gematria of 248. Okay, so in other words, you have Resh Chet, 208, that's Gvura. Pinchas takes hold of the spear, which is Chesed of Abraham. In this way, what does he do? He becomes the perfect balance of Gvura and Chesed. He becomes a perfect balance of these two opposing forces. Okay? Pinchas brings shalom through recognizing that any extreme is bad. I can't go too far to Gvura, I can't go too far in the Chesed, find that middle. Now what's more interesting is let's look at the name Pinchas for a moment, okay? The word Pinchas itself, okay, comes from two words, pen and chas. Pen means to turn towards, and chas comes from the word like chas, like mercy or compassion, okay? Now, through this act, Pinchas is functioning neither as Chesed and neither as Gvura, but rather Yesod, right? He's the foundation, the middle column. And that is why he is given the Brit Shalom, the covenant of peace. Peace comes to people that are centered, the yin-yanging, that perfect balance. That is what's happening here. That is the Brit Shalom. The Brit is the Yesod. That is what's happening over here. He is finally bringing these two forces together, and that force of inner harmony and balance changes everything. Now, if you look at the two letters in the middle, pen, chas, you have pen, right? You have nun, chet, right? You have noach, and you have chen, okay? A person who has chen is a person who has charm, right? They're always, their full self. A person who is centered and self-aligned, he radiates with chen. He is noach, chen and noach. He brings that alignment with the self, and that self creates wholeness, and that is exactly why he was given the Brit Shalom. That is what we need in the world today. We need to find ourselves a place where we could be centered. You have people crazy out there running, and there was in Brooklyn, there was a house in Brighton Beach put up like some Islamic flag and a Palestinian flag together, which was like the policeman take it down because it was a terrorist organization flag. Like, how do you do that? Why are we living in a world of such extremes? Can't we find some balance in our lives? That is what Pinchas is trying to teach you. It seems extreme. Sometimes you have to go to an extreme to bring people to the center. And we have to be willing to stand up and do what's right. Now, if what we're doing is an extreme itself, that's a problem. We need to find that inner balance like Pinchas and bring shalom into a world that is completely lost. May we all be blessed with the clarity, with the understanding that we are complicated beings that has tremendous amount of inner conflict. We can't ignore those inner voices. We have to do what is right. When we stand up to do what is right, that is how you bring shalom into the world. But more importantly, it's how you bring shalom into your body. That inner peace that you have is a most powerful tool for longevity. Everyone's talking about how to live long, how to go ahead and beat death. The way in which you take care of your body is through being at peace with yourself, knowing that you're doing exactly what you're doing. I know right now I'm exactly where I need to be on every single front. Wishing you a Shabbat of Shalom. Bezrat Hashem, we'll continue the conversation next week. Thank you so much for participating.